There's a kind of anxiety that doesn't begin with your current stress. It isn't about your calendar being full or your to-do list getting out of hand. It's something quieter, deeper. You feel it in your chest before your mind even understands it. You lie awake at night, not because something is wrong, but because something inside still doesn't feel right. Maybe you've learned how to function. You've learned how to appear calm. But inside, something stays unsettled. And no amount of logic seems to change that. What if that anxiety isn't coming from the adult you've become, but from a younger version of you who was never given comfort? What if your nervous system isn't malfunctioning, but simply repeating the only pattern it ever learned? Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And that pain isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the low, constant hum of a nervous system that was trained for danger long before you had words to explain what was happening. This is not about blame. This is about awareness. Because until we understand what shaped our inner world, we'll keep trying to fix the symptoms without ever meeting the cause. This is a conversation about that cause, about the inner child, the nervous system, and the quiet work of learning how to soothe what was never soothed. If you've ever felt anxious for no reason, or overwhelmed by feelings that don't match the moment, this isn't your weakness. It's your body's memory, and it deserves to be understood. Chapter 1: The Inner Child and the Nervous System. A hidden connection. The inner child isn't just a metaphor. It's a real part of your psychological structure. It's the part of you that holds early experiences, unmet needs, emotional memories that never had words. Jung spoke of this part of the psyche as the gateway to wholeness. He believed that within every adult lies a child who remembers how it felt to be small, powerless, unseen. And that child lives not just in your mind, but in your body. The nervous system is shaped by experience, especially early ones. As children, we rely entirely on others to help us regulate. When we feel scared, we look for someone to make it safe. When we cry, we hope someone will help us feel okay again. But when those responses are inconsistent, absent, or harsh, we don't stop needing comfort. We just learn how to survive without it. And that survival gets stored in the nervous system. It becomes the default setting. You learn to stay alert, to stay quiet, to stay ready for something to go wrong. Your muscles remember how it felt to brace. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your thoughts scan for what could go wrong next. Even when there's no danger, your body doesn't know the difference. It just knows how to survive. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In this case, the unconscious is your nervous system. And until you bring awareness to what it's reacting to, you might spend years trying to fix your anxiety without realizing that it's not just anxiety. It's a child inside you asking, "Is it safe now?" Chapter 2. Signs your inner child is still in fight, flight, or freeze. You may not even realize it, but some of the things you've been calling anxiety, insecurity, or overthinking might actually be survival responses, not flaws, not personality traits, but echoes of a nervous system that never got to feel safe. Reactions that were learned so early, they've become automatic, normal, familiar. The inner child doesn't just live in memory. It lives in your breath, in your muscle tension, in your heartbeat. It lives in how quickly you feel unsafe, how deeply you crave approval, how hard you try to stay in control. And the truth is, you might still be responding to life from the emotional age when you first felt overwhelmed and alone. You may find yourself constantly scanning for danger, even when there is none. You try to stay 10 steps ahead of everything and everyone. You play out worst-case scenarios, not because you're negative, but because being prepared feels safer than being surprised. You don't always feel safe in calm moments. Silence makes you uneasy. Rest feels foreign. You're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. You might feel unable to sit still, always needing to do something. You fill your days with tasks, even when you're exhausted. And when you do try to rest, your mind keeps going. It won't let you soften. It doesn't trust quiet. Because somewhere inside, quiet never felt safe. Quiet was when tension built, when something was about to happen, when no one noticed how scared you were. Some people escape into overworking, others into perfectionism, some into complete withdrawal. These aren't choices. They're nervous system responses. Fight, flight, freeze. The body's way of coping when emotional connection wasn't available. You might find that you're constantly pleasing others, saying yes when you mean no, smiling when you're hurting. Not because you're fake, but because safety used to depend on being agreeable. Because at one point, being easy to be around was the only way to avoid being hurt, rejected, or invisible. You might apologize too often. You walk on eggshells. You try to take up as little space as possible. Not because you lack confidence, but because being invisible once felt like the only form of protection. And then there's freeze, the most misunderstood response. You go numb. You disconnect. You can't think clearly or feel much of anything. You're not lazy or unmotivated. You're in shutdown. Your nervous system has learned to turn off as a way of staying safe, and that becomes the go-to response anytime you feel overwhelmed. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists." These nervous system states persist because they've been resisted. Not intentionally, not by choice, but because you had to keep going. You had to function. You had to put one foot in front of the other, even when a part of you was frozen in the past. You may not have known you were still reacting to something that happened years ago. You may have thought you were broken, but you weren't. You were carrying too much, too early, with too little support. These patterns aren't here to shame you. They're here to be seen. They don't mean you failed. They mean your body succeeded in keeping you alive, alert, and adaptive. They were brilliant survival strategies, but you've outgrown them. And now they don't feel like protection anymore. They feel like prisons. Awareness is the first key. Recognizing these responses for what they are is not weakness. It's strength. It means you are waking up. You're beginning to notice when the adult you is functioning from the fear of a child who never got to feel safe. And the moment you notice, the pattern starts to soften. You don't have to shame yourself for these signs. You only have to witness them. You don't have to rush to change them. Just sit with them. Honor what they protected. And gently ask, is this still true now? Do I still need to react this way? Or is it safe to learn something new? This chapter of healing isn't about fixing. It's about remembering. Remembering what it felt like to be overwhelmed, and slowly giving that overwhelmed child the one thing they never got: reassurance. You are allowed to take your time. You are allowed to feel what was never felt. And you are allowed to rewrite how safety feels inside your body. Not all at once, not perfectly, but consistently, gently, one moment of noticing at a time. That is how healing begins. Chapter 3. Why you couldn't self-soothe, and why that's not your fault. Have you ever wondered why it's so hard to calm yourself down? Why, even when you know you're overreacting, your body still feels like it's under siege? Why you freeze during conflict, shut down when someone raises their voice, or feel overwhelmed by what seems like a small thing? Let me gently tell you something you may have never heard before. You were never taught how to soothe yourself, because someone else was supposed to do that first. Carl Jung believed that the child's psyche is incredibly vulnerable, and in its earliest stages, it depends entirely on the environment to regulate itself. A baby cannot calm itself. A toddler doesn't have the emotional tools to process fear or confusion or rejection. What it needs, what you needed, was attunement. Someone looking into your eyes and mirroring calm. Someone holding you when your tiny nervous system went haywire. Someone who told you, without needing words, "You are safe. I am here. You are not too much." But what happens when no one does that? When caregivers are distracted, distant, overwhelmed, or emotionally unavailable, the child begins to internalize a deep emotional confusion. They don't learn how to down-regulate because no one ever modeled it. They don't know how to be with themselves because being alone in distress once meant being abandoned in chaos. So when you struggle to self-soothe as an adult, it's not because you're weak. It's not because you're dramatic. It's because you were left to carry feelings that were never meant to be carried alone. This isn't just psychological. It's biological. Your nervous system was wired in an environment that may not have offered consistent comfort or connection. And now, even when the danger is long gone, your body still lives in the past, because it never got the chance to learn a different way. Jung might call this a wound to the archetype of the mother, the nurturing presence that holds, soothes, and reflects safety back to the child. When this archetype is absent or wounded, we feel unheld in the world, not just emotionally, but existentially. We become adults who appear strong on the outside, but inside there's a frightened child still waiting to be seen, still trembling, still crying behind the mask. This is why no amount of logic or positive thinking works in moments of panic. Because what's happening isn't about the thoughts. It's about the body's memory of what it once needed and never received. But here's the hope. What was missed can be relearned. What wasn't given to you, you can now learn to give to yourself. Self-soothing isn't just a skill. It's an act of reparenting. It's a sacred decision to become the adult your inner child needed. And that begins not with criticism, but with compassion. The next time you feel anxious or overwhelmed, instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" try asking, "What did I need in this moment that I didn't get back then?" Then, offer it. Not perfectly, not instantly, but slowly, gently, patiently. Your healing begins the moment you stop blaming yourself for not knowing how to do something you were never taught. And instead, you start showing up again and again with presence, kindness, and softness. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're simply carrying a need that was never met. And now, you get to meet it with tenderness, with time, with love, just as you always deserved. Chapter 4. Reparenting the body. How to calm a dysregulated nervous system. Healing doesn't always begin with insight. Sometimes it begins with sensation, with the simple act of noticing your breath, with the quiet decision to pause before reacting, with the willingness to ask your body, how are you feeling right now? Not how should you be feeling, not how do you want to feel, but simply, how are you? Because the body remembers. It remembers the tension that built up every time you had to pretend you were okay. It remembers the breath you held when you felt afraid. It remembers the way your heart raced when no one noticed your sadness. And until those memories are met with care, they keep replaying, not as stories, but as symptoms. They show up in tight shoulders, shallow breathing, a lump in the throat, a heavy chest. They show up in the inability to relax, in the way you brace even when nothing is wrong. Carl Jung believed that awareness must include not just the mind, but the whole self. He said, "We cannot change anything until we accept it." That includes the body. The nervous system isn't something to control. It's something to collaborate with. It's not broken. It's protective. And it needs to be approached with patience, not pressure. Reparenting the body means becoming the calm presence it never had. It means responding to your own distress the way someone once should have. It means creating moments of felt safety, not imagined safety, not logical safety, but the kind you can actually feel, the kind you can return to over and over until your body begins to trust it. That might look like placing your feet on the ground and feeling the support beneath you. It might mean taking a slow breath in and an even slower breath out, not to force calm, but to invite it. It might mean placing a hand on your chest or gently rocking your body side to side, not because it's a technique, but because it reminds you that you're here and you're not alone inside yourself anymore. You might find comfort in certain textures, sounds, or movements. You might feel more at ease when you take a few moments each morning to stretch or step outside. These small acts matter. They aren't insignificant. They are how the nervous system learns new patterns. They are how the body begins to believe a new message. You're not in danger anymore. It's easy to think you're not doing enough if you're not making dramatic changes. But nervous system healing doesn't happen in dramatic moments. It happens quietly, in the way you choose to pause instead of push, in the way you let yourself cry instead of swallow it down, in the way you notice tension and gently ask your body what it needs, instead of judging it for how it feels. There will be days when your body still goes into survival mode, when your thoughts race, your muscles tighten, and your emotions overwhelm you. That doesn't mean you're failing. That means your body is doing what it was trained to do. And your job isn't to fight it. Your job is to stay with it, to say, I hear you, I feel you, I'm here. Reparenting isn't about controlling your feelings. It's about learning how to hold them. And when you hold your feelings with kindness, something shifts. Your body starts to recognize that it's allowed to relax, that it's no longer alone, that it's finally being met with the presence it needed all along. Carl Jung believed that healing required turning inward, not to escape, but to integrate. He wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." When you begin to look inside with care, with curiosity, with compassion, you awaken parts of yourself that have been waiting for years. Parts that were never broken, only frozen, only waiting for safety. And now you are becoming the one who offers that safety, not because you have all the answers, but because you're finally staying. You're showing your body that it no longer has to do this alone, that it can soften, that it can rest, that it can begin to believe what it never got to feel before. You are safe now. You are allowed to be here. And you are no longer waiting for someone else to bring you home to yourself. You're doing it now, one gentle moment at a time. Chapter 5. Speaking to the inner child. With compassion, not criticism. If you want to calm the nervous system of your inner child, you have to change the way you speak to yourself. Most of us were taught to motivate ourselves with pressure. We believed we needed to be hard on ourselves to be better. We picked up the tone of the adults around us, their impatience, their frustration, their silence, and we absorbed it as the way to treat ourselves. So now, whenever something goes wrong, our first instinct is often to criticize, not to comfort. But here's the truth. You cannot shame a child into feeling safe. And the part of you that still feels small, still feels vulnerable, still feels unsure, that part does not need more pressure. It needs presence. It needs patience. It needs someone to stay. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But this is exactly what the inner child is asking for. To be accepted not only when you're productive or composed or impressive, but even when you're a mess, even when you're afraid, even when you're not okay. Speaking with compassion doesn't mean you always feel warm or loving. It means you choose to respond gently, even when you're upset with yourself. It means that when the old voice rises up and says, "Why are you like this?" you pause, you listen, and then you say something different. You say, "I see you're hurting. I know you're doing your best. I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." You don't scold yourself for being triggered. You ask, "What are you afraid of right now?" You don't punish yourself for being tired. You ask, "What do you need to feel safe again?" You don't rush yourself through the pain. You sit with it like you would sit beside a frightened child, hand on their back, letting them know they don't have to go through this alone. And something begins to shift. Not overnight, but gradually, the inner critic that once ruled your inner world starts to lose its power. Not because you silenced it forcefully, but because you stopped agreeing with it. You stopped feeding it. You stopped assuming it was telling the truth. And that makes room for a different kind of voice to emerge. One that says, "You are not too much." One that says, "You're not broken." One that says, "You were never meant to handle everything on your own." This is the voice your inner child has been waiting to hear. It's not about perfect words. It's about tone. It's about intention. It's about learning to meet your pain with kindness, not judgment. Jung reminded us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Speaking to your inner child with compassion is how you begin to bring light into those unconscious patterns and change the way you live from the inside out. This is how you soothe the nervous system, not with force, but with gentle truth, with permission to be human, with warmth where there used to be coldness, with love even when you don't feel lovable. And every time you speak to yourself this way, you rewrite the emotional script you were handed as a child. You become someone your younger self would have felt safe with. You break the cycle, not by being perfect, but by being present. That's where healing begins. So maybe your anxiety was never just about the present moment. Maybe it was a message from a much earlier time, carried silently through your body. Maybe it was a way of saying, something still hurts here. Something still needs care. And maybe it's not that you've failed to grow. Maybe it's that you've finally grown enough to begin listening. When you start noticing your nervous system not as an enemy, but as a messenger, everything changes. When you stop criticizing your reactions and start responding with curiosity, you stop the cycle of self-blame. When you offer kindness to the parts of yourself that were once ignored, you begin to rebuild trust, not with the world, but with yourself. Carl Jung believed that healing meant integration, that you don't become whole by pushing parts of yourself away. You become whole by turning toward them. I hope this video was helpful. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts or experiences. Thanks for watching.